All right, blessings, blessings, blessings. Thank
What's
you,
up,
Steve.
James? How you doing?
Peace. We this is ad hoc. I don't know what this is. This is a podcast. I don't know what it'll end up being, but I'm gonna call it hip hop true legends. So I feel like there's untold stories. Like we were just talking about. I was there for a lot of particularly when digital and analog found that bridge, and so we're here to talk about what's not told about the actual true legendary stuff that happened in hip hop as a community. And so, like I
Hmm.
said, I don't know what this is, but I'm super honored and blessed to have that guy, Steven Samuel. And the blessing is that I don't know, it was like 2 days ago, a brief link up on LinkedIn, and we get opportunity to speak. So I know there's something you wanted to say. I'm gonna give you the mic.
Right. So, first of all, James, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Like I told you, I really don't do a lot of these interviews and stuff, but I do like doing the ad hoc stuff, the stuff that's off the fly, a lot of stuff to learn. And a few seconds ago, we were just talking about, we were really talking about like hip hop and how not everybody was a rapper back then, in the 80s, mid 80s to 90s. It was more of a skill set, right? My OG was telling me though, and it made sense. He's a few years older than me, so I'm born 1971. He's 1965. His name is Fat Doug, and he doesn't get mentioned a lot when it comes to hip hop, but he is the original producer of "Come and Talk to Me" remixed, the one that Diddy claims to have made. Yeah, that's Fat Doug. He's also a ghostwriter for a lot of a few rappers, especially a female rapper. But I'm not gonna say. Well, you know what? Her name is actually his name is actually on the record, but for some reason she runs around and she tells everybody that she wrote it. But we gonna let her live. But Fat Doug he is the reason for the remix, along with DJ Doc and a few others. But he was the one. Puffy was the intern over at MCA that picked him up, and when he went to Doug's house, he saw him DJing, mixing records, and he said, "Yo, that's dope. I should take you to yo." And then he went back to Andre Harrell and was like, "Yo, can you give me and Doug some time to go in the studio and work on a remix?" And Andre, or just give us time or whatever. Doug tells it him a lot better, but his story doesn't come out a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like. The documentation of hip hop, especially when you look at the hip hop 50, it's the same 50 people telling the same story from their vantage point. They don't tell it from anybody else's vantage point. So I had to use my first 5 minutes just talking about my OG Fat Doug because without him, he led me out of the music industry. He showed me that this music industry is not everything that it's built up to be. Because when I went to his house, I'm seeing plaques on his wall, but he's in his mother's basement. And I'm like, I don't get this. I don't understand, you know. And he explained it to me, and I was like, wow, this is real to me. But to answer the other question, or at least to address the other question, back in the days, to be an MC in New York was kind of like being a Jedi in Star Wars. You ain't really running around telling everybody you a Jedi because you know you're gonna get rolled up. The first thing, as soon as you told somebody that you was a rapper in the 80s, the first thing they would say is rap. And if you didn't rap and your rap wasn't good, you might have got smacked, you know. And I miss those days because a lot of people will be getting smacked right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff, man. So I want to start to touch on some stuff there, but if we can, because there's something you said there that Doug, it was something deep. I thought you said about Doug. And number one, we
Mhm.
got to make that what it is about is giving that voice to every perspective because every perspective is valid and it has its own different insight. So
Mhm.
I thank you for that. But you said that Doug, and I don't know how much you're willing to offer it. So I'm just asking. But I think
Mhm.
there's going to be a gem there when you said that he told you why it could be that he had all the accolades and the plaques, but he didn't have the you know the living situation, and he didn't have the obviously the financial resource. Is that could you speak to that at all? Because I think there's a super gem. I don't want to blow past that.
I'll tell you what it is. Fat Doug loves hip hop. Most of us love hip hop. We will do anything at the spur of the moment. Like, oh, you need me to come to the studio? Sure, no problem. You need me to, oh, word, you need me to pull out my records and let you take them to the studio and sample them? No problem. And there's a lot of people that do that out of the goodness of their heart. The problem is when you mix it with the music industry. Sometimes people get industry, they don't credit people, they don't shout them out. But I will give Diddy that, right? He shouts out Fat Doug on the beginning of This Is the Remix album. And a few people, like even Funkmaster Flex, a DJ in New York, he mentioned Fat Doug. So there are people that actually know the story. You know, I just find it odd that, I mean, even when you play "Come and Talk to Me" remix, it says featuring Fat Doug, but to this day, he has not gotten a dime off that record. You know, so for history purposes, it's important to know that he actually did the work. He was the one that brought the records. You know, I don't know exactly what Diddy did, but I know that Doug brought the records. Doug brought the idea and the concept. You know, so that's what it is.
Feel you. So all right. So before we talk about who you are to hip hop and why
Mhm.
it's so pivotal and important, and why I feel
Right.
like this is an untold legend. Um, where so we're just talking about you being born in '71. So I was born in '79. So
Okay.
I didn't. I would love to get some information on where you're from because it's in terms of hip hop is the legendary place. And then what was life like growing up for you?
Right.
Where you get to the point that you link up with a Fat Dog.
Okay. So that's good because so I'm from the Bronx, born in 1971, like James mentioned. I went to private school for my elementary years. For high school, I went to Cardinal Hayes. From Cardinal Hayes, I got kicked out for something I did, and I got caught up in the hustle. And it wasn't drugs, everybody. Hustle doesn't mean drugs. Hustle means that Steve had a computer and I was writing people's book reports and I was getting paid like $40 a report and I could type really, really fast. And when I got to this, I was one of the few people in my neighborhood that had a computer with a hard drive, with a disk drive. So I was able to not only type the reports, but save the reports. So people would come back with changes, and then I would charge them like $8 for changes and stuff. They didn't realize that I was loading up the files and just printing them out again. You know, shout out to Tiaya Smart Young. She's also a person from Brooklyn who was on that hustle game too. You know, so I just found that out recently when she's from Essence, and me and her we have a very similar history. So when I got to Clinton, so when I went to Hayes, I went to Hayes with Yogi, who was also on a Bad Boy, and he had a rap group called Crew, and he was also a ghostwriter in the music industry. You might know Yogi's name from I think he did Let's Get It for Black Rob and can't remember G Dep. He produced Let's Get It and a number of hits. So after I left Hayes, I went to Clinton. When I got to Clinton, I was in school with Antoinette, and I had just missed Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant is a year before me, but the hip hop element in Clinton that just turned me on. I was like, yo, I got to be a part of this. Like, I'm a geek. I don't know nothing about the 5% Nation talk or whatever, but I like making these words rhyme. And so I would let me see, what was I doing? I was just trying to write my rhymes and stuff. And then somebody came to my house and they when they went in my room, they was like, yo, what is that on your table? And I said, oh, that's a computer. And they were like, what does it do? And I had to explain to them what a computer was. And that was the first time that I realized that I was different. Like, oh, so not everybody has a computer in their house or whatever. Like, I knew people in Hayes didn't have. There was like maybe like one or two people in Cardinal Hayes that had it, but not necessarily Clinton. So it was mind blowing or whatever that I had a computer. And guess what? My hustle game in Clinton stopped because nobody in Clinton was doing book reports. They barely wanted to go to school. So that $40 a day that I was making, that was dead. You know. So from Clinton, I went to Bronx Community College, and it was during those years that I had formed the infamous Troubleneck Brothers. Now that was a rap group in 1992, 93, 94. It was seven of us, and we had a couple videos. We were down with Steps on Entertainment with Bill Stephanie, and that kind of fell short because of I think God. When I look back at it, is sometimes things just aren't meant to be. But I knew that I wanted to be in the music industry, and it was during my last year of Troubleneck that I met a girl, Felicia Palmer, who became my wife and my partner in what became So.com. So when we first started For Control Media with So, I had I was at this time I wanted to be a producer. I knew that technology was where it was at. Like I knew how to work at SP 1200. I knew how to work at S900 from reading the book. You know, and I want to bring up a point. If anybody has ever watched the Wu Tang story on Hulu, there's a scene where RZA talks about buying a used SP 1200, and when he buys the 1200, he buys it without the manual. That's the reason why that's important is because he had to teach himself how to use this machine. He probably wasn't even using it all the way to its full capacity, but like when you read the manual, like Easy Mo B read the manual. And if you and when you listen to Easy Mo B's production versus RZA's production, it's not that RZA's production is bad, but Easy Mo B's production is more on time, whereas the RZA's production is more a little bit off. If you sample a RZA production from one point to another, you will have the hardest time syncing it up. But that's a good thing, right? Because it gives it that live feeling or whatever. So I was the type of person that read the manual. When I went to the studio with my disc, the engineers would always say, "Oh, thank you for synchronizing all your stuff." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem." I thought everybody knew how to do that. I thought that was just common. So at that point, the internet comes up. The internet. I was introduced to the internet by a gentleman by the name of Chili Q, DJ Chili Q. Now he was on WBLS. He was a DJ and he lived next door to me. And he was telling me every night he would go upstairs. We would be hanging out on the bench, and I'd be like, "Yo, where you going, yo? It's only like 11 o'clock." He's like, "Yo, I got to go upstairs. I'm gonna get on AOL real quick." And I was like, "Yo, what's this AOL thing?" Now, keep in mind, I had been online before. I had been online since the '70s. I was doing other things. Let me see. When I was online as a kid in the '70s and the '80s, I was
You ever,
selling. I
you
was
ever,
selling. Trying to think how I can word this. Back in the days, on the payphones, you could use a code to call people for free.
right, the one that like say the operator we use or the technician we use, right?
Right. So when I was in Hayes, I would run my computer during the day, and I would get those numbers. I would hack those numbers out, and then I would sell those numbers. And those numbers did particularly well with like college students. But like I said, once I got kicked out of Hayes, like my whole hustle just ended. People were interested. The people that I was hanging out was not interested in going to college. They wasn't interested in book reports. They were interested in like smoking weed and all that other stuff. So it was kind of like hard for me to make a dollar.
Yeah.
But how did I get here? So
So we're
we
talking
was at
about
we was at Lyron with
yeah,
America Online.
right. Yeah.
So I get on America Online and I noticed that the internet is like totally the internet. Now they have a name for it, the internet. Before it was just go online or whatever. You had to use your phone and everything. And I think we were still using the phone with AOL, but it was
But
colors.
before we get there,
Okay.
for us having been you know at the cusp of the change, we have the benefit of stuff that I think people who were born before and after don't have. So to go back to talk about some stuff that was occurring back then, because I was online when there were things like CompuServe. So this is back in
Yes.
Commodore 64. So these things weren't advanced. Even when we look at like Angel pages, which some people might remember, which were like static
Mm-hmm.
pages, there was like predecessors to that where you could build your. So the internet was still real niche, and it would be
Right.
somebody like you or somebody like me, some like weirdo in the projects, right, that has a computer, or probably somebody in college. That's it, right? But in
Right.
terms of what they call social media now, there were chat rooms. It's just that everybody was on the phone, and back then cell phone wasn't ubiquitous. Everybody didn't have a cell phone yet, right? It just the
Right.
technology wasn't there. But people had pay phones, or they had a home phone, and a home phone charged you for a minute. So you either had to have a good plan and you were solid with that, or
Right.
you to monitor your usage. But if you could get a hold of one of these numbers, you could jump on this chat line and it'd be 20, 30 people on the phone yelling, and then you could
Mm-hmm.
star 60 something and jump their little private room. So these are the
Right.
predecessors to social media, right? That were out.
Exactly.
I just want to give context for anybody that does watch this who was not born in a real tight span of time between 71 and like 85, that didn't
Mm-hmm.
know both sides of the coin, that wouldn't understand the relevance of how these things connect, which I think is what's untold, right? It's that bridge in between that's getting lost. People don't know how
Right.
we got here. So I just wanted to talk about that before we get into now when messengers become a thing, right?
Oh,
And,
ooh. You talking about messengers?
right.
I was a New York City messenger, and that's where I took my time to write my rhymes and stuff. People need to know that before, like we were messengers. I would deliver stuff from one side of the street to the other side, and then the messenger gig got killed because faxing came along, and then email came like right after it. Like as soon as everybody got a fax machine, everybody got email. So it was just different. It was I mean, technology was just moving at such a fast speed. Looking back at it now, it was moving very, very fast. We didn't have any idea that I mean, I remember getting a high speed internet in my house. Like that was like unheard of.
You see, you're bringing up another key point, which is there's no other time. I know people think things move fast now. It moves really slow now.
Mhm.
Between the time when people had like big cell phones and you had to have a lot of money and it had to be in your car, to when every person had a beeper, to when everybody could
Mhm.
be on the internet inexpensively, that's like 5 years of time. People don't understand from going from tape and like the best
Mhm.
was a DAT machine and DV tape to like
Mhm.
DSLRs and like
Right.
we're gonna get into World Star and stuff. That stuff was such a short. And again, I don't want to take up too much of the air, but I want to say to you how important what we're doing now is when we
Mhm.
talk about Joe and stuff like that, and the just do that he gets, because there's a bridge there that people don't know about. That like
Mhm.
really, all the stuff we're seeing now, we saw like 20 years ago already. Even down to like Metaverse, that has Second Life already. So a lot
Right.
of the stuff that people see now, they don't understand. There was a group of us that like
Mhm.
what a meme was and what all this stuff was. And I just want to continue to say it's important what we're doing right here, right now. It's got to get talked about more because the old
Right.
get left behind. And
So 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 let's talk about a couple things, right? So the first thing is that hip hop is a technology culture. We for some reason have made it a violent culture. We have made it to be the most dumbed down discovery ever. But when you really think about it, you got a man who's like working on turntables. There's a child at home who's sitting down trying to figure out how do I extend this beat. There's a child that's like scratching. There's a child that's like, I mean, this is imagination. And now in 2024, it seems like we have lost our imagination. And not only that, but we don't even celebrate the imagination that we had properly, because there's things about online hip hop and all of that stuff in between that we've made cool. We made cell phones cool. We made beepers cool. Like doctors had beepers, but we made them cool. Whether that be you want to call it black culture or hip hop. And another thing about hip hop, if you listen very closely, hip hop is one of the few pieces of music that documents how technology is used. Let's look at Renee by the Lost Boys. He talks about Renee uses code 2. right? So now you got to understand what is code two. You got to like do some research if you don't know what a beeper is, and then it's like, what's code two? That means that's his second chick. You know, his mom is number one probably, or he's got a better girl that's number one, and this girl, you know, back in the day, I mean, I remember having to know the cell phone, I mean, not cell phones, the payphone numbers to certain corners. If you want, like, that's how you would meet girls. You would call a certain payphone and be like, "Oh, what you look like?" And they be telling you, like, "All right, let's hook up." That's how we hooked up. I mean,
And this is original social media, right? And
original social media.
Point that I was talking about. I was listening to Jigga, and I was talking about like rap is the only. I was thinking about music in general because you know a lot of us from this era. I don't know how it works with other eras of hip hop, but we have
Mhm.
a wide breadth of knowledge of music, right? If you come from that era of like 80 something, 90 something,
Right.
maybe not 2000, but you know, where was I going with that? Like the oh man, see, I lost where I was going with that. I started thinking about music.
I think you was talking about like maybe how people had to know things like
Well, what I was saying is like this is what I was saying. So like if you take classical music, right? Nobody never said like 1605, 1721. You never heard a song do that. So what you just said about that's what I was talking about. You talk about chronicle, making chronicle out of stuff, right? But
right.
like, you got Jigga like 9-6, and you would get a landscape. You have Mobb Deep 9-6, and you get or even Snoop Dogg 9-6. You know,
Right.
or 19 even you look at Prince, you know, 19, but you usually have to have a seminal moment for it to be a song, right? It has to be
Right.
1812. But with hip hop, through a rapper's career, you know, like, you know, this year I'm doing this year. So that was that. I love that you brought that. Was what that's now I see where I was going with that. But then it just made me think about even more about that, and that's where I got lost in the web of what hip hop is. It is such a great connector, and I remember when they said hip hop wasn't going to work, and and you
Hmm.
talk about beepers. I remember when you either had to be a drug dealer or a doctor was literally the pastiche, right? That was the meme. You're either a doctor or a drug dealer if you have a beeper. That's it.
Right.
We made the world today cool. This world would not exist, and I don't mean to come off as a curmudgeon, right? Because that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
It's a bridge that was there, and so the reason I did go on this whole tangent as well, not to even cut you off from the other point, because you started talking about hip hop, and so I want to fast forward now because I want to get into 9-6 because you were talking about Felicia Palmer, and
Hmm.
now I want to say why we're talking, why I call you a legend from my standpoint before we start getting the stuff that's going to be a little bit more briskly and political. Let's
Hmm.
before we leave the history aspect. Why are you a legend, Stephen Samuel? What did you start in 1996?
Well, in 1996, I started Full Control Media, and we came up with at this time the Blue Ribbon campaign was big on the internet, and also what was going on was called the digital divide. And the digital divide was defined as Black people who were not going to be on the internet because they didn't have computers. Um, I bought into that then. I don't buy into it now. I'm 54 years old, and I think there's a bigger issue than the digital divide. We could talk about that later. But so what we wanted to do is we wanted to do a magazine that talked about technology of Black people, and we knew we wanted to use hip hop as the angle. And after publishing two paper magazines and realizing how hard it was to get advertising, and we're also dealing with printing. Back then, you paid per color. Like now, you print something in Staples, it's full color. Back then, you either did black and white or you did full color, and it cost a lot of money. So after our first two issues, we were no, I think we did three issues. We were like, this is too expensive, and we need to do something different. And we decided to go make a website. At that time, the Blue Ribbon campaign. Oh, and when we did the website, another thing that happened too was that America Online, they would have these chat rooms, and they always had chat rooms for every other topic but hip hop. You always had to make the hip hop room. You know, it was never just there like on the opening screen. You had to like create the hip hop room or whatever room, especially if they didn't have black. Let's be real. They didn't have black shit on America Online. They just had all that other stuff. We had to make our own space. So we decided to make so at the same time of during the magazine, we noticed that there was a culture in the chat rooms, and that culture was hip hop. When we started, okay, there's so many things that happened at this time, James. Right at this time, I was working with mixtape DJs. So the first thing that I had done that's really legendary in my opinion was I created the first computer generated J card. So cassettes, mixtape cassettes were not a. I was working under a guy named Chuck Black. He sold mixtape cassettes in prison, but you couldn't send them a regular cassette. They needed to see what was on it, and it needed to be clear. It couldn't be handwritten. So he was like, "Yo, you do that digital, you do that printing stuff. Can you make me a J card?" And I was like, "Sure." So I was generating J cards for SNS, Craig G, and all of them, just for that, just for those prison ones, so that they could get into the prison. And I mean, he had a list of people in prison that was getting the mixtapes. So from there, um, that's how I got into design or whatever. And then at some point we were dealing with the Blue Ribbon campaign, which was the silencing of content or whatever, and a lot of people were really upset. Oh, freedom of speech on the internet. We were still dealing with that, and then and then we were switching from the magazine to the online aspect. I started to do surveys of the people that were in the room. I would send them a link and say, "Can you do a survey for me? And if you do the survey for me, I'll send you a free mixtape," because Chuck was giving me the mixtapes. And what I was finding out was that not everybody into hip hop was black. I was like, well, this is an Asian girl in the Bay Area. Her name was Fetty Girl. That was her name, Fetty Girl. So I started to realize that, this internet thing is much bigger than, I mean, not internet, this hip hop thing is bigger than black. Because even as a Trouble brother, yes, I did see that there were white fans out there, but I never had really seen like a lot of people just in one space. And the more I did surveys and sent out mixtapes to people, they would write back with feedback, and the DJs liked it. The more I realized, like, yo, hip hop needs to be online. Like, we could really do this. And so we got online and stuff, and we started going to record labels to support our venture. And the record labels were so far behind, they didn't even have email addresses back then. Like, you actually had to walk to the label in order to get a meeting and stuff. They was like, "What's the internet?" So it was like, well, the internet's online. I think the first company that got with us was Relativity Records. They gave us some music, we looped it and stuff, put it up on the site. They did interviews and stuff, and I mean, we did a lot of stuff with them. And then we did then we decided to call ourselves SOHH.com, which was a partnership with 88 Hip Hop and a website called Fresh Finesse, which was run by Pascal Anton. I don't want to butcher his name, but his name was Pascal. And he's from Haiti, and he was really really smart. I think he went to MIT. So now I'm in a room
This is that
with like,
unseen stuff. This is that
yeah.
unseen stuff. We talk about MIT. We talk about the labels. I'm realizing how much we gonna, because I see that we have about 20 minutes left, and I'm realizing how much there is to unpack. But you know what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
I don't want to cut you off, man. But I'm realizing we're gonna have to figure something out. There's a
No,
lot.
we're gonna do this in parts. We're gonna do this in parts because one of my biggest complaints about Hip Hop 50 is that they've only interviewed 50 people for it. There are so many stories, and I'm not saying that everybody's story has to be told, because I mean that's virtually impossible. Some people have died; their stories will never get told. You know, but I do think because we have cloud servers and all of that stuff, that we should do a better job of recording hip hop. From the different angles and stuff. That's why one of my other homeboys. Well, I mean, my other OG. My other OG is Van Silk. Now, for those of you that don't know who Van Silk is an early hip hop party promoter from the 70s and 80s. He's about 10 years older than I. And he's responsible for Rap Mania. It was the first live pay-per-view broadcast of a hip hop show, you know. And So he tutored me on wanting to learn more about hip hop history, along with another brother named Jaquan, the Foundation. And if you type that in, you'll see that Jaquan, he's been covering all the. I think Jaquan has done a better job of documenting hip hop than some of us in the forefront, to be honest. I mean, he's talked to Spoonie G, he's talked to um, Wonder Mike. Like his story on Wonder Mike to me was crazy because Wonder Mike I never knew was from Inglewood, New Jersey. I never knew Inglewood was popping like that. But he talks about the Sugar Hill Gang. He talks to Flash and them, Busy B. Another thing we don't talk about is Jazzy J, who started Def Jam. Not Rick Rubin, not Russell Simmons. Let's just be real. They swindled that from him.
Yeah, so there's a lot. Like I said, as we talking, I'm realizing an hour ain't even close. But that's a whole nother conversation, which I'm sure
Whole nother conversation.
offline.
But
But so going back, because bringing it back in, so this is the man that along with Felicia Palmer created SOHH.com, which
right,
you don't get SOHH.com, you don't get that piff, you don't get the Kali. If you don't get that, you don't get memes. I don't know if memes happen in another alternate reality, but memes it comes from this is stuff that people don't know. I was on the internet when there wasn't memes, right? When there wasn't a moving, and it comes from like 4chan and these bigger things they've heard, but it proliferated in the hip hop board. It proliferated when mixtapes like Dipset mixtapes, went online. And to your point, they went everywhere. This is when they did red and white make pink, right? And this, if you know, right, what that means, right? And that
right.
went everywhere. So it was almost like a whole different music industry within the music industry. And because of that, you have the way the internet exists now, the level of cynicism that people have, the way they're sarcastic, direct, clear parallel to that stuff. So you are the person that allowed that to happen, and to hear where you came from and where you come from. People have to understand you don't, and we'll talk about this. Like I said, we need to break this out. You don't get podcasting, right? If you don't get this, because if you know, if you a torrent baby, if you a LimeWire baby, if you know when they got to the point where they would send you like it would say an Eminem song, but it wouldn't be the Eminem song, and like so if you know. So there's so much for us to unpack that people really know that it's not just hip hop. The other thing that you said, and I don't know how you said it, but that hip hop is about, I don't know if you remember what you said, but like that hip hop is not music. It's not a violent music, it's a technology music. That's what you said. That's crazy. Right. That's crazy.
Well, let's look at what we do, like turntables, needles, mixers. If you break down the way that rappers rhyme, I mean, like cadence, from Eminem to Coogee Rap to Big. I mean, when you look at what they write, like, listen, anybody listening to Minute Work by Coogee Rap, that is like, he's talking about being in the fashion industry. Was it the fashion industry? No, that was about building a building, right? He's talking about construction, but he's putting it in terms, like, you just got to listen to Minute Works. You just need to sit down, listen to Minute Work. Poison was about fashion. He's using like a lot of fashion terms and such. This was advanced for the 80s. When you look at, I mean, the turnaround from Melly Mel to Coogee Rap to Nas is incredible.
You got to bridge Rakim in there somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Rakim is a whole nother show. But oh, man, my God.
I'm telling you. So we getting off. See what I mean? Like, I'm going to go back. I don't know how we're going to figure this out.
You're going to be doing a lot of cutting and editing.
Well, no, I'm going to put this like it is, but I'm going to go back and write down everything you touched on. And like I said, we haven't gotten to context of what needs to be unpacked various levels. So I'm going to follow up with you to see how we do that. I know you talked about other people that need their story told. So there's so much here. But I want to, again, just center it back to SOHH to let's for this next 13 minutes or so, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, let's bring it back to Steven Samuel SOHH. We've gotten here. It's 96. We talk about and let's give the full history of SOHH throughout the rest of these here, so people get understanding.
Right. So let me say this. Right. So I told you. So it was Chili Q that got me back online. Right? Oh, that's right. I didn't even talk about why I got offline. That's a whole nother story. Okay, we're not even gonna talk about why I got offline in the 80s and then got back off. Um, but then it was Chili Q that inspired me to get back. I went to my OG Fat Doug and was like, yo, Doug, yo, you should come online with us and do this so.com with us. And he was just like, nah, man, the government, because that's another thing, right? That's one of the things that stopped a lot of black people from jumping on the internet was because of the whole COINTELPRO and stuff. We weren't really sure where this was going. There's even certain rappers that I couldn't interview. If I told them I was an online website, they didn't want to do the interview. They felt that it would compromise them somehow or whatever. Like the FBI was tapping the phone lines and stuff. And I mean, they weren't wrong, but they definitely was paranoid about doing anything online. The first person we got, I'll just say it, Jay-Z. He was not doing online interviews in '99. The person I worked with was Theta Sanford. She was the one that got me my Jay-Z interview for him to do an online chat room. Another person that got online early was Heather B. And I don't know if you remember this. Since you're from Brooklyn, you might remember the Cocoa Bar. It was a coffee shop cyber cafe, and we had done a chat. We had Heather B come down and chat in one of the online hip hop rooms and just chat with people, and they were so excited that there was a celebrity online. So she was one of the first people to do an online chat.
So it seems loosely familiar, but you bring up just such. When we talk about bridges, Heather B, man, like from music, I feel like she was in MTV. She was in reality TV in like one of the first 3 seasons of ever that there was reality TV.
Right.
To Sway, like Heather is a bridge if you ever saw one, like crazy.
Right. So she was like definitely her label EMI. They definitely saw the vision of the online stuff. Like, okay, this online stuff might be cool or whatever. I forgot. I think her publicist was Ricardo. Can't remember the last name. But so we started doing like little small strides in hip hop, bringing the interviews, getting the music on there. And then I remember when Biggie got killed. That was the first story we had done. And I do want to talk about, we did have the forums. That was like, like the guest book or whatever, where we had the forums. And in the forums, I met a guy from Colorado. His name was Kibion Salazar Moreno. And he writes to me and he says, I want to be a writer. And I'm like, a writer of what? He's like, hip hop. And he's like, I think there's enough hip hop to do daily hip hop news. And I said, I don't think so. So he said, I'm gonna show you. So every day he writes me a story. And after about 2 weeks, I said, all right, fine. Let's make a spot for it on the page. And he becomes the first, I believe we're probably one of the first websites to do daily hip hop news, like a story every day.
That's a fact. I mean, we ain't gonna have time to talk about all hip hop and that pith, but you don't have SOH. I was there. Like, you don't have that. You don't have any of that stuff, and you don't get the same internet. So that's crazy. Like, legendary. Right. That dude is legendary. If you know, like legendary.
I think he's, and I hate sometimes the fact that people talk about So and they talk about Steven and Felicia, but if it wasn't for Kibion, coming up with that idea, hip hop would not be. And he's Latin. I just want to put that out there, for all y'all people that be like trying to discount the Latin contributions to hip hop. He's Latin. He's from Panama, to be exact. And after that, so let me say, I had to learn code. I wasn't so my father was a C++ programmer. And you know what? There's a guy in Queens who was recorded as being the first black man to make the Atari cartridge, or he was responsible for the cartridge. I don't think it was for Atari, but basically he was the foundation of the cartridge, how to put data on this box and stick it into a console, and you play games. He was black, and it dawned on me. He was the exact same year as my father, 1940. Okay. This is what I want to talk about real quick, and then we can talk about other things. I want to talk about the digital divide, right? That man was in Queens and he had a computer, and I was in the Bronx and I had a computer. There is no digital divide, it's priorities. Everybody that in my circle that had a computer did not have Jordans. They did not have starter jackets. They did not have V bombers. It was your parents decided computer, clothes. Because black people are not, we're not technical, if that makes sense. We always had technology, but my father said it best. Most people didn't have a need for a computer. What would you do with a computer? Like my father, sadly, he used the computer to play lotto, and then he also used it to he was a PTA president, and he used it to help him with the candy sale records using spreadsheets and all sorts of stuff. It helped him organize a better candy sale. He was the PTA president for like 8 years. No, 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 4 years or whatever.
Does he do Bitcoin now?
No, my father passed away,
Okay.
but he was my inspiration to code. He was my inspiration to do databasing. When I look at it now, like I don't like to just I can do design work, but out of everything that I like MySQL the best. It's just comfortable for me. Um, I like pulling data back and forth between servers and APIs and stuff like that. But I taught myself how to code in the mid '90s because at that time not everybody knew HTML. My skill set was pretty quick. I was able to like put up sites. That was like my side. So was my what I was doing. When I was a messenger, I was making 4.25 an hour, $4.25 an hour. Let's just you know. And my Felicia Palmer actually got me a job paying me $25 an hour typing. So there goes that typing thing again, right? So in high school, I'm doing the book reports and I'm getting good at typing, and then it comes back 360. She gets me a job typing, and I'm realizing, oh, I don't have to be a messenger anymore because the messenger job was just to it was to satisfy two needs. My mother was like, "You 21, you gotta have a job," and being a rapper, I needed flexibility to go to do things. So I said, I'll just be a messenger. Being a messenger was like the easiest job you could get. You didn't have any real responsibilities. You came in, you walked around New York City all day, you got paid. But when she got me this job, a job at her job, making $25 an hour, and I was sitting down having lunch that was being paid for, I was like, okay, I'm done with this messenger stuff. And then I had enough money to buy myself some books. So when we finally did the magazine, I needed to teach myself how to do graphic design. So I bought a book on Photoshop. And then it was like we had somebody to code the site, but then they dropped out. It was a dude from it was a dude. He was from MIT. He was looking for an internship. We hired him, and then the next week he was like, he got an internship in Motorola. And I said, "Yo, I hear that." You know what I'm saying? That's an opportunity. So so as we're walking out of we had met him in a bookstore. As we're walking out of the bookstore, he grabs an HTML book. He says, "Read this. You'll build your site in a few hours." I I did exactly what he said. I read it. I was like, I think I got this. I think I could do this. And I built my first website, which was Show.com. So, when I look back at it, Show.com is like my first, like some people have multiple websites that they built. Like I only have one, and I was fortunate and blessed that it was fairly successful because the one thing people always ask me is, what do you do outside of show? I'm like, that was it. I've never had a job since 1996. I've been at show. I've always eaten that way. There may have been some side hustles here and there, but eventually the side hustles paid off. Um, in 1996, we established the Online Hip Hop Awards, which was the first award show that allowed people to vote on different categories for who they wanted to win. We did that again in 1997 and in 1998. We finally did it at Tramps in New York as a live show with Naughty by Nature, Grandmaster Flash, Cannabis, Chuck D, all on the same stage. And we had partnered with SonicNet. Now, the reason SonicNet is important is two reasons. One, they were like the only like they were like a really big music company, but they were bought out by MTV. A lot of people don't know that MTV Online was originally SonicNet, because MTV did not have the capabilities of doing an online at that time. The Online Hip Hop Awards show for that year was the second highest webcast behind Victoria's Secret's swimsuit stick. So when I see the People's Choice Awards, and they be like, "We the first," I'm like, "How? How are you the first?" I'm in Wired magazine. I'm talking about doing the Online Hip Hop Awards in Wired magazine in 1997. So how are y'all first? I had already done it 3 times in a row.
Listen, man. Like I said, we have so much.
Lauryn Hill's brother, Mulaney Hill, he's a tech. A lot of people don't know that. He's a tech dude. He's mad smart. He did all of that. He did all the Columbia sites, all the hip hop Columbia sites. He helped me with the Online Hip Hop Awards for 1997. He brought in the designer. You know, we worked on that together. But like I said, hip hop is a technology culture that for some reason we just have diminished it and made it
A violent
something
culture.
else. A violent culture.
So there's a lot to unpack, man. It's a blessing. You know, I knew it was gonna be a good one. So I can't even say I didn't think it was gonna be this good. I knew it was gonna be fire. But just listening to it, I didn't really think about how depthful it is, and whether it's you or I that get to do parts. But on top of that, this is a conversation that has to be had on a broader stage, and more people have to be a part of this conversation. Is like you said, there's way too many narratives, and we don't want to lose people. And I hear you. You know, everybody don't have to get theirs, but at the same time, it disappears and we don't have it. So as much as we can do in this day and age, when everyone has a movie camera in their hand, you know what I mean?
Right.
We could be an example. So I want to thank you so much. I look forward to the opportunity to actually. I feel like we scratched just the surface. So we didn't even get to what I really want to talk to you, like Joe Budden. You know what I mean? So I hope we get an opportunity to talk more. I know you said there's some people who have stories. I don't know how this rolls out.
Yeah.
Involved, but I just want to thank you so much, man, for this opportunity to speak.
You're welcome, James. No doubt. No doubt.
All right,
hit your stop button there.